There's a ton of noise out there. So how do you get decision makers to pay attention to your brand? Start a podcast and invite your ideal clients to be guests on your show. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. We're here today with Erroin Martin, VP of Sales at Conversica. Erroin, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing fantastic, Logan. It's a beautiful day outside here in the Bay Area of California.
Nice. Well, great to hear and really excited to have you on this Friday when we're recording this episode. And I think this topic of AI in sales is going to be one that a lot of our listeners are going to want to tune into. It seems like you can't get away from this subject lately, whether you're on LinkedIn or just having a conversation with another sales or marketing practitioner. So really excited to jump into that and hear your thoughts. But before we do that, Erroin, I would love for you to just take a second to introduce yourself and tell us what you and the team at Conversica are up to these days.
Sure, Logan. Thanks for the opportunity to be on the podcast and talk to everybody out there.
You bet.
So I'm Erroin Martin. I've been with Conversica for 4.5 years. Been doing some form of sales for almost 20 years. And I work with the world-leading conversational AI for business. So we were doing lots of wonderful things with natural language processing, natural language generation, and all the other cool stuff that AI can provide for businesses selling to other businesses.
Mm-hmm. And tell us the makeup of the sales team that you lead, just to give us an idea, Erroin.
Yeah, so I have a team of about 20 individuals mixed with some sales development reps, inside sales manager for them. I've got enterprise reps, mid-market reps, and small business reps.
Nice. All right. Let's jump right in, Erroin. As I mentioned, this topic of AI is everywhere these days, especially as related to sales. And so what you wanted to touch on is, some specific ways that where we want to use AI and where we still want to leverage the human side of interaction in sales. And the first thing I know you wanted to touch on was some of the tools that we can use to eliminate, inefficiencies in the sales process. Tell us a little bit about where AI comes into play there.
Yeah, thanks, Logan. So when you look at your sales process, there's a lot of pieces that can be automated, and there's a lot of pieces that need to be automated with some form of intelligence, or I would say better way, super intelligence behind it. Mm-hmm. Things to think about, like routine communications, processing of orders, processing of quotes, applying very quick math to either discounts or quotes that you're putting out there, as well as ways to enable the salesperson to have the right information at the right time when they want to engage with the customer. I go back to my old field selling days when I worked at Pfizer Pharmaceuticals, and we would get a list of what we call our top docile physicians to talk to. And by the time you got that information, those doctors weren't the top prescribing doctors anymore because right. the data was about 2 months old and it was never really quite accurate.
Yeah,
and if you can imagine, that could be
right.
Exactly, and if you can imagine, that's really frustrating when someone's like, "I don't do that anymore," and you're like, "Oh, huh." Mm-hmm. An AI tool that can go through and scrub that type of information, provide much more valuable context to who you're talking to, is a tool to use. Mm-hmm. At Conversica, we don't just sell our own AI. We also use other AI tools in different areas. So, for instance, for me, I've got 20 reps I need to sort of manage. I can't be on a field ride with each one of those reps on a call. Mm-hmm. So we use tools like Gong Daioh or Chorus.ai to record those calls, transcribe them so we can actually, look at trends and what reps are saying, coach for improved performance, et cetera. I use some tools that do some AI projection of where we're going to be for our forecast. That makes my life a lot easier. And then we use tools that do some social, I wouldn't say engineering, but give the social, or as I talked about earlier, that information at the right time. A tool called Crystal Knows, which helps you understand who you're talking to, their persona, where they are, using disc profiling, as well as other apps surfacing up information, news articles, LinkedIn profiles, etc., right before you have a meeting with somebody, so you're more attuned to who they are and what they're doing.
Yeah, it sounds like, as you mentioned, a lot of the have to do's, but that don't necessarily lean on the key skills of the salespeople on your team, right? The mundane work of quote processing and some of those research tools that are very repeatable. So I think that's a great point. And it seems like everybody these days is talking about Gong.io. Have you guys been using that tool for a while now, Erroin?
Well, we use a competitor to Gong called Chorus.ai, but they're pretty similar. And it's been very effective for my team. It's really helped me understand, at what point are reps, losing the interest of the prospect. What are some of the common things that we're trying to coach out of the reps, and whether it be what they're saying or type of terminology we want them to use. It's been really effective, and I've heard the same. I've got customers who do use Gong, and they see the same thing. It's been very effective and transformative for their sales teams.
Yeah, and it seems like it takes a lot of the guesswork out of that coaching process, which is key for someone like yourself or one of our listeners that that is leading a sales team and trying to coach them through and see what's working, what's not working, all those sorts of things. So some of the other areas that we talked about, in the low return work, anything else that you guys have seen that maybe our audience isn't quite thinking about, where they could apply AI in the sales process, other than the coaching and the analyzing of the sales performance and their interactions with customers?
Yeah, think of like routine conversations that you're normally trying to have when you're trying to chase someone down for either content or find out if they're even interested. That's actually kind of something that we do at Conversica. We're chasing down to make sure that leads are actually touched and they want to talk to somebody. That's really important stuff, but it's kind of boring work for a lot of humans. They don't really want to do it very well. Scheduling, and believe it or not, that seems to be one of the hardest things that human beings have a hard time doing. Just to automate that piece of the puzzle is incredibly important. And then, if you think about all the man hours that human beings, waste on trying to find the right content to deliver to a prospect, that's also an area too where AI can be applied to help sort of surface up the right content at the right time for a rep to hand off during the sales process. I always make jokes about my rep's Christmas tree, every single piece of content in there, the shotgun effect, hopefully that something sticks. But if I was talking to you, Logan, we're in a buying cycle and you want to know more about integrations, when you don't want to know, maybe that just means you want to understand how integrations work, not necessarily the type of integration you want to have. And if an AI can recognize that for you, knowing where things are in the buying cycle and surface that for the rep, that makes life just a lot easier overall. Because the whole point, if you think about the use of artificial intelligence, is to take away routine tasks so that human beings can focus on the more higher functioning, emotive sort of sales part of the process. I mean, sales is an emotional connection with your prospect. Buying is an emotional decision for them. And the best way you can get to that emotional level and connection with a prospect or a customer is to really get to know them and understand them and have a human connection with them. And AI can free you up to do that by getting rid of all the other mundane stuff that drains your day, to where you get in front of that customer and you're kind of don't want to talk to them anymore. Believe it or not, it does happen.
I love that point. I love that point. Yeah. I mean, most salespeople, they enjoy, the interacting with their clients. They enjoy, those conversations where they feel like a deal is moving along. They feel like, they're connecting the prospects' pain with the solution that they can provide. But if it takes so much mundane work that most salespeople hate to do, things like you're talking about. So I love this idea of AI not replacing sales, it enabling sales to do more of what your salespeople are good at, right?
Yeah. I mean, we're not that far away. If you think about it, we're not that far away from a sales rep going into a sales call, whether it be inside or field sales, right? And they're talking to the person. and the person's like, you know what, Logan, this is the time, we're ready to make the decision. And you just turn to your mobile device and you say, hey, Cindy, could you gather me all the documents that I need to close the Wharton business? And all of a sudden an email shows up and there it is, the right, because the AI has been, transcribing your calls. It understands exactly that the person you're talking to likes things to be in a much more direct way. It understands that they only have to look at things that are 2 or 3 pages long, and it gets all that content to the hands that now you have it right there. And your assistant has basically given you all the information you need to close the deal within a few seconds, maybe a few minutes, depending on what you have from size-wise. But to really to get there, we're not that far away. We're not that far away of where you'll have an assistant, pre-call plan for you, your meeting. You'll have an assistant that will transcribe your meeting, and then you'll have an assistant that will help you close your meetings or close your deals. And all you have to do is get that human connection, really understand the problem, and provide that information back in the system to help divine that solution.
I love this idea that you're talking about in using AI to really enable and empower sales rep to do what they do best.
It's story time again, and we're talking about search engine marketing. Today, I'm going to tell you about a challenge within Pelican Case's B2B division. Pelican needed a partner with deep B2B expertise that could get them a massive bump in leads from their pay-per-click campaigns without increasing spend. After vetting a handful of agencies, they decided to go with Directive Consulting, a B2B search marketing agency located in Southern California. Directive took on this challenge by refining their targeting and building custom landing pages for their advertising efforts. Once implemented, they saw a 208% increase in conversion rate. Needless to say, Pelican Cases met their initiative. And I have a hunch that Directive can get these kind of results for you too. So head over to directiveconsulting.com and request a totally free custom proposal. That's directiveconsulting.com. All right, let's get back to this interview.
As we were talking a little bit offline, Erroin, you mentioned this idea of empathetic curiosity. And so if salespeople are going to be more empowered to get out of these mundane tasks and really focus on the emotional connection, with their buyers, they really should be focusing on these emotional intelligence skills like empathetic curiosity. Tell us a little bit more about where you see that going in the future of sales.
Yeah, so empathetic curiosity is really having an emotional connection to asking questions. So, I learned this a long time ago in a previous career that the art of asking a question is not just the question itself, but how you deliver the question, how you look at the person when you deliver the question, and how you try to engage with them on an emotional level so they actually give you the best honest answer. And, a lot of sales reps, they learn the qualifying questions that are there. They learn the ways to qualify someone in and qualify something out, but they miss the opportunity to have a human connection through that curiosity. And so when you're looking at a deal and either pre-call planning that deal or you're in the midst of the deal cycle itself, when I talk about empathetic curiosity, is really trying to understand what are those decisions, what's the emotional impact that's driving that customer to do the things that they're doing. Remember, human beings buy from other human beings in an emotional capacity, and they rationalize their decision after the fact. And so if you can understand what are the emotions that are driving them to do what they're doing, you'll have a better sense of how to close that deal. You'll close larger deal sizes, and you'll close deals that are longer because you've aligned correctly with the customer. So, so AI is removing all the mundane tasks so that you can now focus on having a true human conversation and understand from people what is it they're doing. And that's what I look for when I try to hire my reps, people who really are curious and want to understand the motivating factors why people do what they do. And I think having AI will help you understand that because it'll free you up to be able to do that even better.
Yeah, I love that. What are some of the ways you guys are seeing, Erroin, that have been effective for you to kind of draw out that empathetic curiosity or to kind of coach up that trait a little bit more on your sales team?
Yeah, so going back and looking at some of the tools that we have, so looking at our own tool, we drink our own water, breaking down the response back that our AI assistant gets from a lead, they typically reveal a lot more information. We do a lot of research on the companies that we're looking at, and then we pair that to the response that person has. And then as we get into the actual sales call with them, using Chorus to transcribe that information and look at it in comparable to what we see, and you start to see the emotional decision process going on. So I'll give you a good example. One of our customers, they had someone respond to us, and the person laid out in detail, all the problems that he was having, the type of solution he was looking to get from our customer, and then a lot of negative statements about what he thought about salespeople. So this is valuable information as a sales rep. I'm going to go into a hostile environment and try to sell a guy who's telling me exactly what he wants, but then tells me that he hates salespeople.
Right.
And then when they looked at the customer and they looked at what had happened in the past, this customer had a history of getting burned by other companies and has had a high sense of skepticism. Mm-hmm. That was valuable for their rep to, when they actually engage with that person, to completely and utterly address his skepticism, almost align with it, and then help him walk through the process of like, look, we're going to be here for you. We're human. We make mistakes. Not every software program is perfect. There's bugs in every single one of them that's out there. And that was able to get him to go from about a $60,000 deal to about a $250,000 deal. And that magnitude of $190,000 is because they understood where that person was coming from. And we try to do the same thing here at Conversica. Mm-hmm. So listen to the voice of the customer is, reading what they say when they first engage with us, understanding what the business problems are, researching the company very well to understand their business problems. And then in that sales call, really try to connect with them with their profile in the right way. If they're a high driver, very emphatic person, approach them in that modality of how they like to talk to get them to open up even more. Mm-hmm. And then I train my team to really ask a lot of open-ended questions, and I'm sure that there's a dull moment out there for your audience. Like, of course, you should do that, but not just ask any open-ended question, but really ask open-ended questions based around feeling. Like, how do you feel about this? What are your feelings around that? When you see this happen, what feelings occur for you? And that gets people to get out of the thinking mentality, the rationale mentality, and start to open up with their emotions. Now, they may still talk about how they think about it, but their tone of voice will change. The words that they use to describe their thoughts become much more powerful adjectives, and that tells you a lot of where they're coming from and the type of decisions they're going to be making down the road.
Yeah, I heard a great TED Talk a while back. It's actually one I've bookmarked and gone back to several times on having really great conversations, not just in sales, but in any regard. And when you ask a simple question, you get a simple answer back. But when you ask an open-ended question that leads to emotion, you let them reply. You don't ask, do you like that? You turn it and ask an open-ended question, but lead it with emotion. I was hearing John Barrow's talk a little bit the other day about, the classic, give someone the price and then just be quiet. Instead of doing that, give someone the price and then ask them, how does that make you feel? That lends itself to getting an emotional response, which is what you need to find out to, right? And we forget that we're selling to the emotional side of the person. We get caught up in, the ROI and this case study and how great it looks on paper, but we've got to remember that we're selling to another emotional human being, and we've got to start there and then back it up with the social proof and all those sorts of things. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Erroin, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I think hearing, some B2B salespeople out there in our audience, hearing someone else talk about, the fact that AI is not here to replace salespeople, but to make their lives easier, make them more effective, I think is a great conversation to be having. And you bring up some really solid points for us to think about on that. If people want to stay connected with you, follow what you and the team at Conversica are doing, or just reach out to you, ask a question about sales or sales and AI, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
Yeah, excellent. You can find me on LinkedIn. My first name is pretty unique. It's Erroin Martin on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only one that's on there. My Twitter handle is @Erroin, my first name. And then for all things related with Conversica, @myconversica, at the @ MyConversica for Twitter. And then, of course, follow us on Conversica.com, read our blog as well, too. We talk a lot about AI stuff on there as well.
Awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation, Erroin. Thanks so much for being a guest on the show. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Logan. I appreciate it as well, too.
There are lots of ways to build a community. and we've chosen to build the B2B growth community through this podcast. But because of the way podcasts work, it's really hard to engage with our listeners. And without engagement, it's tough to build a great community. So here's what we've decided to do. We're organizing small dinners across the country with our listeners and guests. No sales pitches, no agenda, just great conversations with like-minded people. We'll talk business, we'll talk family, we'll talk goals and dreams. We'll build friendships. So if you'd like to be a part of a B2B growth dinner in a city near you, go to b2bgrowthdinners.com. That's b2bgrowthdinners.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.